Hello YouTube, welcome back. GPK Forever with another video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about TCG Player. If you guys do not follow me on Instagram, I went ahead and did a little question and asking if you guys would like me to kind of share my experience and some of the lessons I've learned why I've been on this the TCG Player, and kind of my experiences and the lessons I've learned. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do that. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys want me to continue, maybe even make this into a little series or something like that. So then that way you guys can get updated on maybe new lessons or new things I've learned. So let's go ahead and get started. This is actually kind of funny, but I've already done this video and it turned out it didn't record it. It recorded like a couple seconds. That's it. But I spent quite a bit of time talking, so hopefully it'll refine it down a little bit. But let's get into this. First lesson I would say is organization. Organization is key in trying to save time and maximize your time. So as you can see, I've got some Obsidian Flame ETBs. These are the upper parts. I'm also using the bottoms as a different kind of storage. But kind of how I do it is I split it up. So currently right now I'm working with two TCGs. We have Digimon and the Pokemon TCG. And kind of what I like to do is as soon as I have it listed, I go ahead and put it into the correct sorting container. Whether if it's Pokemon, all right, it's going to go in this one. If it's Digimon, it's going to go into here, right? That kind of paints the picture a little bit of some of the organization I do. I also have another Digimon top. It's going to be a Shining Fates top, and usually this one, if anything's in a card saver or a top loader from, you know, when I pulled it or whatever, I'll usually leave it in here before I go ahead and pull it. And I know this one has quantities, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But organization, I believe, is key and things like that. And before anyone asks, this is kind of the volume, or what I have left, in a sense, because everything else, in the last couple days, I've had some really big sales. I just shipped out an order of around 250 cards, so these are pretty empty because I haven't had much time to add any inventory. So that's kind of a hope, is to eventually add some more inventory. And maybe I do a weekly checkup with you guys and be like, hey, this is kind of what I have left, this is what is now live, or whatever the case may be. But let's go ahead and get started. So kind of how I do it is I put singles over here, or you know, anything higher like SRs or things like that, that'll go over here. You know, anything bigger I'm going to put over here, and they're all individually penny sleeved. Kind of keeps it simple. With these, when I mean quantity, what I mean is, for example, this Tyrannomon, there's multiple copies in here. There are 6 copies in the penny sleeve, and kind of why I did this is so then that way when I'm going ahead picking out orders to ship, if someone bought, you know, multiple copies of Tyrannomon, or even if they bought one, all my Tyrannomons are in one spot. So then that way it saves me time, because I know, okay, I just need to look for the Tyrannomon sleeve, and boom, all right, here we are, and I need 2. All right, cool. I could go ahead, pull out the 2, put this back, and continue grabbing whatever I need, right? It's kind of what I'm trying to do, is trying to save as much time as possible when shipping orders, because you have to remember, you're not charging very much for shipping. You're doing like $1, but that's also including, you know, shipping supplies and things like that. And one important thing to know about TCG Player is a lot of this stuff you're not selling for $1, $3, right? You might have a lot of cards that can go for that, but a lot of this stuff is going for cents, right? Some of these might even be a penny, 2 pennies, maybe a nickel, maybe a dime, right? Heck, maybe even 75 cents, right? And what you want to do is try to maximize your quote-unquote payout, right? And by doing that, you want to try to save as much time as possible. So the more organized you can be, the better, right? That is a big thing, is organization. I feel like that's probably the biggest thing you can do, is make sure you're very organized. And that way I'd be like, all right, because everything in this box in the back is going to be quantitated, right? It's all quantity. and things like that. Everything over here in this box to the left is all singles, right? Either I have one copy, maybe I have two, maybe I have three copies, but they're more of the bigger cards. So while quantities are going to be more of my lower end cards, right? And ones that I have a lot more of, so I can try to keep them together. So that's kind of what I do. And I mean, we'll hop over to Pokemon for a minute. Right now, I am currently just doing Japanese and English together, right? So eventually, once it gets big enough, I'll go ahead, split it, English in one, Japanese in another. If you're doing two languages as well for different cards, that's what I recommend, is maybe keeping them separate once it grows bigger, but maybe at the beginning it'll be fine to keep them in one container. When you first start off with TCG Player, you have about 100 listings to put on, so go ahead, pick out some cards, for the first 100, and then the more orders you get, and as long as they get to the destination on time, it'll help you rank up, quote unquote, or level up being a next level seller. So right now I'm currently at seller level 3, so I can list up to 50,000 cards. So, do I have 50,000? No. This is I think like just over 250. I think it's like 251, 252, because I don't know if I mentioned it, but I've had a couple big orders the last couple weeks, and I haven't been able to keep up. Right? That's another thing you need to watch out for, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But you can go through your inventory extremely fast. And you know what? Maybe we'll go ahead and hop over to bigger orders. So the lesson with big orders is, so we've already talked about organization, right? We've kind of talked a little bit about quantity. With your big orders, make sure everything that is ordered actually gets put into the package. And here's a good lesson I just learned, is I have 2 cards that I found out were not put into the package that I had sent out. So I'm going to go ahead, I've talked to this buyer, still wants them, so I'm going to go ahead and mail them out to him at my own expense. So they're not going to be paying for shipping for those 2 cards, I am. So that's going to eat into that profit from that order, even if there is any profit from the order, right? Because I think it was like 75 cards, which I had to put into a mailer envelope because there were just so many. But the idea is, when you're doing big orders, make sure you have the quantity right. Make sure even if they bought 1 copy of this, 1 copy of this, make sure that all of those get into the correct envelope or package or whatever you're using to ship out. Make sure they all get together and sent out, so then that way you're not sending out 2, 3, maybe even 4 little packages or little orders out because you're forgetting stuff, right? And that's huge. Watch out for it. Just stay clear of it. So that's what I've got to say with that. It's a big thing you need to make sure you're on top of, so then that way it doesn't hurt you in the end. And here's another example is, say you're working with Pokemon as well. Try to list as many cards from the same set and quantities at the same time. So for this example, we're looking currently over at Pokemon Wild Force, which you can now buy and sell Japanese cards. So if you're into big Japanese collecting, you can get some of the cards you need. So, which is very nice. So if you happen to be missing a Cottony, cool, you can go pick up a Cottony for, I don't know what it is, I think it's like a nickel or something like that, whatever the case may be. But the idea is, for example, in this story, and this is an experience I had, was I've had one order where they bought out everything I had Wild Force, except for these 2, because I think I had like 9 and 10 copies of each of these listed. So they bought 4 and 4, and then they bought all my Heatmores, all my Turtwigs, Totodiles. They bought everything else out, right? Including all my EXs and my Hollows. They bought a lot, right? And it was all from the same set. So kind of the main point of the story is if they're already looking for one card from one set, you have a very highly you have a pretty high chance that they might pick up the other cards from that same set because maybe they're building a couple sets at a time and they need to, pick up a few cards of each to complete or get whatever they're missing. Or maybe, and just maybe, they decided, you know what, I'm going to just build the entire set from TCG Player, which is actually financially better. If you can get one of everything from the same seller. So you kind of, if you're selling on TCG Player, you want to be that seller. You want to be that seller that has a lot of cards. So if they are going and buying whatever they need or deciding to build an entirely brand new set of, example, Wild Force, you can have more cards, and then they might be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go with this seller because they have everything I need. They have almost all the commons and uncommons, rares, and even most of the EXs. So I'm going to go with him rather than maybe this other seller who has maybe just Cottonies and 2 Hollow for Alligators, right, on their store. So kind of what you want to do is you want to go ahead and make sure when you're listing something, try to list, how do I put this? If you're going to list, quantities and they're all from the same set, try to do as much of it as you can all in one. So then that way, if a seller is, or if a buyer is looking for multiple copies or looking for cards from that set, you will have a higher likelihood of selling those cards. That sounds a lot better. So it's a big lesson that I've learned is I noticed that when I did, currently I'm working on Digimon Classic Collection, and we'll go ahead and move these out of the way and look at that, and I can explain to you a little bit better of what I mean. So I had a huge order, the 250 card order, a lot of it was Classic Collection, but because I didn't have a lot more listed, I potentially lost out on those potential sales. So currently, right now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make up for that, right? So we're going to hop away, and this is going to be more towards pre-listing, right? Pre-listing work. No, it's not all just, list it and I'm good. There's work before and there's work after. We've talked about work after, work before. What you need to do is you need to make sure that every card you list, you know the condition of the card or, the condition, so then that way you can list it properly. TCG Player has specific guidelines on what is mint, light played, heavy played, or damaged. So as a seller, you're going to need to make sure you check every card to make sure that they follow those standards and guidelines. If you're a buyer, you also can receive access to this. So then that way, if you're buying a card near mint, you can understand what is acceptable as near mint and what is not acceptable as near mint. So then that way, as a buyer, you're not kind of getting quote unquote screwed over because of someone's negligence or someone just not paying attention to what they're really doing. So then that way you can get what you paid for. You paid for a near mint card, you're getting a near mint card. Sellers on TCG Player, you want to be careful. Make sure that that everything's checked, and then that way you can be like, say a case happened or something happens, you could be like, no, for 100% fact, I know that card is near mint and it fits all the fits all the guidelines. So then that way, you can stay away kind of out of that drama, with buying and selling. The less drama you have, the better it is in general. For those who also sell on eBay or maybe even on Whatnot or any other platform, you kind of know what I'm talking about. The less drama, the better it is, and the more work or more product or whatever, the more you can push out. So make sure you check the conditions of everything, especially if it's maybe something you bought from Facebook Marketplace, maybe bought from a friend, or collections, wherever the card came from. Just double check and make sure it fits the guidelines. If you're buying, I'd go ahead, just read the guidelines, so then that way you kind of know what condition the card is before you start buying on TCG Player. So let's get into the pre-part of selling on TCG Player. So kind of the idea behind this is you want to be organized as well, not just afterwards, right? You don't want to just only be organized after it's listed. You want to be organized beforehand. And what do I mean by that? So this is a box of Digimon Classic Collection I had opened up a while ago, and like I said, I'm currently working on it. So what I did is I went ahead and sorted out the different colors, whether it's purple, black, yellow, blue, red, green, right? I went ahead, sorted them out, and the reason, and this will be important, is so say for example I'm looking at Wizardmon, right? I decided after I sorted all the bulk into their respective colors, I'm gonna list Wizardmon first. So alright, cool, look at that. There's a couple copies of Wizardmon, so we're gonna pull them all out, right? And I know for a fact that every Wizardmon in the bulk should be in the purple because I've sorted it. Oh, look, there's another Wizardmon, right? So then that way I'm able to go ahead and go through the bulk fairly quickly and pull out all the Wizardmons in there as well. So see, that wasn't too bad, right? And I mean, we pulled out more than 4, so I think there's about maybe 10, give or take. So we pulled out all the Wizardmon, and we can do a quantity listing so we can get all 10 as active. The reason why this is very helpful of making sure things are organized by color, you could do this with Pokemon and One Piece as well, is to try to save time, right? You want to save as much time as you can, because this is another important rule, is, not just dedicated time, but making sure you use your time wisely, because you want to go ahead and make sure that to be honest, you can be on TCG Player listing cards always. So what I personally recommend is to go ahead, try to, set a time, say I'm only going to do TCG Player 30 minutes a day, maybe 15 in the morning, 15 at night, right? Or maybe all in the morning or all at night. Whatever works for you personally. Maybe an hour works best. Maybe you even want to put 2 hours in. Cool, great. That works out. Whatever works for you, great, awesome. We like that. But what you want to do is you want to try to use that time as much, because not only, so say for example you're doing the 30 minutes, you also want to ship out your cards. Maybe you need to respond to a message from a customer about an order or something like that, right? I personally feel like it's pretty important to try to use your time wisely, or whatever time you have to put into TCG Player. Try to maximize it, so then that way you can see a lot more potential growth, potentially, is kind of how I think of it a little bit. And my brain works a little bit different, but that's kind of how I do it. And if doing this helps me get more cards listed faster, that's great. So that's why it's kind of important to be organized beforehand. Because just imagine if all of this stuff, and I mean there is quite a bit of bulk, a lot of cards in there, and there's a couple off to the side right there. If all of it was mixed in together, right, it would take me 4 times as long probably to pull out these Wizardmons. But I made it easier on myself by sorting into colors and then working the colors, right? So use that if you're going to do a lot of common, or if you opened up a case of Pokemon or Digimon or whatever it is, One Piece, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh. Again, whatever it is, use some sort of way of sorting and organization, so then that way you can pull out multiple cards of the same character or spell or trainer at the same time, so then that way you can do quantity listings and build up your inventory faster. But also, if there's a player who's looking for 4 copies, cool, they can pick up 4 copies all in one go. So that's pretty important to note, is being organized not just before, during, and after. So you want to be organized all the way through the process, right? And please remember, you're not going to be perfect on your first order. I mean, I'm not. So be prepared for failures and mistakes, right? Whatever failures or mistakes you happen to have or come across, just try to think of something, all right, what I did wrong? What can I learn from this? What can I do to prevent this from happening the next time I ship out this many cards or the next order I get, right? What can you do to prevent the same issue from happening, right? That's kind of what you want to think about when you're doing this. So that's a good way to maybe try to keep learning and growing while doing, TCG Player. Another big one, and at least I didn't hear about this from YouTube, and I will tell you guys about it. When you sell on TCG Player, you have 48 hours from when the order was placed to have the cards shipped out. So that's another reason why I personally believe you need to be more organized, so then that way you can process orders faster and be able to get the cards out on time, right? 48 hours to ship, yeah, that might not seem a lot, but if you have work, if you have kids, if you have 2 jobs, right? Maybe even pets you need to take care of. Those take time, right? Maybe you want to watch a movie. Maybe you have a date night coming up. Maybe you have a hobby, maybe a tournament you play in, whatever the case may be, right? Maybe you're even going on vacation, right? You want to be able to be as organized as possible so then that way, you can ship really fast and beat that 48-hour deadline, right? It's very important. I personally don't know what happens if you don't hit the 48-hour deadline. I think I want to say you get some sort of penalty, but I don't know what it is because I have always been ahead of the 48-hour deadline. I usually ship within 8 to 10 hours after orders placed, but I currently don't know what the penalty is. But if you do sign up for TCG Player as a seller, I believe they'll tell you. I don't remember because I signed up a while ago, but I never actually listed anything until about 3 weeks ago. So take that as it is. If I do know, I will let you guys know kind of what to expect. But no, that's why it's important to stay organized the entire time because you have that 48-hour window period from when the order was purchased. So, just as a heads up, I believe I covered a lot of the big stuff as well. Another thing you need to know is if you're serious about doing TCG Player, be aware that you will probably burn through bulk pretty fast within the last week. I've probably shipped out close to like 500 cards. So that's why those boxes you saw earlier that I had everything organized into looked pretty empty, is because they are. Because I ended up selling most of the stuff I had. So just as a heads up, if you're trying to do this into maybe another business or maybe a side gig or something like that, be aware you're going to go through a lot of product. Make sure you have shipping supplies as soon as you have listed even a single card, because you don't know, that card could potentially sell within 10-15 minutes. The fastest card I've seen sold was 5 minutes after I listed it, but I just happened to list it probably at the right time as someone was looking for it and I had the best price. Or maybe I had the best feedback. Whatever the case may be, just be aware of that and make sure you have all your supplies you need to go ahead and ship things out in a proper and orderly manner is kind of a big thing. I'm trying to think of anything else that I've learned or that you should know for your first month of doing TCG Player. I think I've covered most of the basics. If you guys can go ahead and let me know in the comments down below anything else that you have a question for or things like that, go ahead, let me know in the comments down below, and I will make a video about it so I can be able to help answer your questions. And feel free to leave a like and subscribe to join this journey with me on TCG Player as well as YouTube. And yeah, thank you all for watching. It really means a lot. I hope you find this video either educational or informal on TCG Player. I could even do maybe a buyer's perspective or even a seller's perspective. So maybe that way it can answer any potential questions you have or any worries/concerns. So thank you all for watching. This is GPK Forever, signing